Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Norwegian government announced it will shut down its offices in the West Bank after two armed groups threatened French, Norwegian, and Danish nationals in retaliation for the caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. About 12 armed Palestinians raided the European Union offices.
12 مسلحا فلسطينيا مكاتب الاتحاد الأوروبي مطالبين بإغلاقها احتجاجا على تلك الرسوم.
In response to the defamation of the Honorable Prophet through the caricatures that were published in some European newspapers, dozens of armed men from the Yasser Brigades of the Fatah organization and the Jerusalem Brigades of the Islamic Jihad movement raided the European Union headquarters in the Gaza city and announced that it will be closed to the public until further notice or until certain European countries apologize. They threatened to take harsher measures if an official apology is not made in the next 48 hours.
We confirm the following. First, the closure of the European Union office in Gaza until further notice. Second, we give Danish, French, and Norwegian governments 48 hours to make an official apology or else. If Islam is defamed again by next Saturday, we promise to shell the headquarters of the European Union and all European offices and churches in Gaza.
This is the second time armed men raided the headquarters of the European Union, and it seems that the third time will be very different. One of the armed groups has given the Danish, French, and Norwegian governments only 10 hours to apologize, or else the retaliation for the defamation of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, will be devastating.
Any citizen from these countries present in Gaza puts himself at risk. We will close the Agence French Press and any press offices from these countries, as well as the French Cultural Center. Thus, we give these governments only 10 hours to apologize to the Muslim nation and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Young Palestinian men raised signs that read statements warning against the defamation of the Honorable Messenger, Islam, and Muslims. Defaming the Prophet has affected 1.5 billion Muslims, which explains why observers believe that what happened can be categorized as an attempt to defame Islam and Muslims, not as free expression. Hazim Badaru, Abu Dhabi Television, Gaza.
The 5 permanent member countries of the United Nations Security Council have agreed on a resolution recommending the transfer of Iranian nuclear files to the Council. The resolution will be presented to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Meanwhile, Russia demanded that any recommendations to impose economic sanctions on Iran must be avoided. However, American President George Bush has expressed confidence that the International Atomic Agency will adopt a resolution recommending the transfer of the Iranian nuclear files to the Security Council so he may impose sanctions on Tehran. Mr. Bush also vowed to defend Israel against Iran if deemed necessary. This comes in light of comments made by the Iranian defense minister that Tehran will take destructive measures against any country that targets his country's nuclear facilities.
The International Atomic Energy Agency gets ready to hold an emergency meeting to decide the fate of the Iranian nuclear files. The Iranian President Mohammad Ahmadinejad has strongly criticized the international superpowers which have convened in London and recommended the transfer of the Iranian nuclear files to the United Nations Security Council. In a speech in the town of Bushehr, Mr. Ahmadinejad described these nations as being of a fragile and fake powers. He criticized them for trying to control the will of the Iranian people while they possess huge stockpiles of nuclear weapons. He rejected Western initiatives calling on Iran to halt its nuclear program. Iran did not bow to Western pressure. Instead, it was defiant, which has further escalated the tense situation. The European and the Russian positions on Tehran's nuclear files are somewhat similar to that of the American administration. This has made Iran more defiant and rebellious. The Russian and Chinese delegations to Tehran failed to broker a deal with Iranian officials. Mr. Larijani, Iran's chief nuclear negotiator, reiterated similar statements issued by his president Najat. Mr. Larijani has vowed that Tehran will not voluntarily cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Instead, it will resume uranium enrichment programs on a wide scale. Iran's defiant position was not received well in England. This comes as British Foreign Minister Jack Straw met with his Iranian counterpart Shahir Muttaqi in London. Mr. Straw warned Tehran to refrain from making threats against the international community and to start cooperating with the International Atomic Energy Agency, cautioning Iran of the consequences. Mr. Straw's comments were reiterated by the French Foreign Minister Philippe Douste-Blazy, who confirmed that imposing sanctions on Tehran is an option. However, Russia and China oppose such initiative, especially since Iran hinted that it will respond by halting its oil exports. Beijing has confirmed that the Iranian nuclear files must be resolved under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Meanwhile, the United States is rallying support against Iran among members of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The 5 member countries of the Security Council are gearing up for an emergency meeting to discuss the next step that should be taken regarding Tehran's nuclear files.
للحظة التي سيرفع فيها الملف الإيراني إلى المجلس.
The Iranian nuclear weapon program poses a threat towards security and peace. It is up to the Security Council to render a decision on this matter. Once it receives the files, the Security Council will deal with them in a way that enhances its authority.
In his State of the Union address, President Bush rallied the international community against Tehran. On the same token, he tried to reach out to the Iranian people by repeating the message of promoting democracy in the world.
Tonight, let me speak directly to the citizens of Iran. America respects you, and we respect your country. We respect your right to choose your own future and win your own freedom. And our nation hopes one day to be the closest of friends with a free and democratic Iran.
Bush's message has not received a warm welcome among Iranians who expressed anger over his meddling with their internal affairs. They took to the streets of Tehran to protest mounting foreign pressure on them.
We continue our report on the Iraqi front, where Judge Raouf Abdurrahman, who is presiding over the trial of former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein and 7 of his aides, adjourned the court session until February 13 after the trial was boycotted by the defendants and the defense team.
The court responsible for trying former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein and 7 of his aides commenced the 10th session of the trial. In an unprecedented move, the trial witnessed the absence of all the defendants and the defense team. Chief Judge Raouf Rashid Abdel Rahman stated that some of the defendants refused to attend the trial before, while others were barred from entering the courtroom due to their behavior at the start of the session.
Because of the continued absence of defendants Saddam Hussein, Barzani Ibrahim, Taha Hussein, and Awad al-Bandar at the session, the court has decided to continue barring them from the courtroom. As regards to defendants Abdullah Qazim Ruwaid, Mulhir Abdullah Qazim, Ali Dieha, and Muhammad Zawi, who are outside the courtroom causing chaos, they are in violation of the procedures of this trial. Therefore, they too will be barred from attending future sessions.
This is the second time Saddam Hussein did not show up in court. Meanwhile, the chief judge has adjourned the session, in spite of the defense team's announcement that they were boycotting the trial unless the judge resigns, which led to another defense lawyer being appointed. Behind the curtains, without revealing the witness's identity, the court listened to the testimony of 2 witnesses from Dujail village, who recounted torture incidents in the year 1982. However, the defense lawyer questioned the truthfulness of this testimony and denied the dates were correct.
Your Honor, some of the families, not all of them, were sent to the desert. I mean, after we asked around, we found out that he sent them to the desert. The women were in the ground floor, while we, the men, were upstairs. But when they tortured us, they did it in front of the women. Then, for a while, they would take the women out and would bring men in their place.
Some Iraqis, for their part, believe that Saddam's absence from the court sessions will not interrupt their course, stating that the court maintains legal proceedings. However, the consistent absence and increasing appeals are seen by others as a strategy to undermine the court's legitimacy.
The body of a 15-year-old Lebanese shepherd, Ibrahim, was found. Israeli occupation forces had kidnapped him from the Shebaa farms in south of Lebanon, according to Lebanese security officials. The Lebanese authorities announced that the Israeli forces shot the boy near the Lebanese border with occupied northern Palestine. Our correspondent said that gunshots were fired from the Israeli base at the occupied Basra farms in the presence of the convoy of the International Emergency Forces. The Secretary General of Hizbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, vowed to avenge the killing of the Lebanese shepherd, reassuring that the resistance will not stand by with its hands tied.
The message I want to say is that if any other Lebanese civilian has been arrested by the Israelis, then they must return him to Lebanon right away. We will not sit and watch the number of Lebanese prisoners increase from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 while we are just sitting by and watching. Also, let them be careful. We don't usually work like this. We don't usually do something and say we didn't do it. We say we have done it even before we act. From now on, I'm saying this. If this brother, this Lebanese civilian, whose name I don't know, nor do I know where he is from, if he returns killed or martyred, the Islamic resistance will avenge his death. It will enact a punishment.
We will now go directly to Beirut, where the Amal movement and Hezbollah are making a statement at a press conference.
The main issue, according to the Constitution, is that the leadership of Hezbollah and the Amal movement has decided to return its representatives to participate in cabinet sessions. Thank you.
Excuse me, you addressed the resistance as not being considered a militia, but what about the other conditions in the negotiations in which you stated you would not return to the cabinet unless other critical conditions are met? What happened on this matter?
Concerning the first part of your question, we have reached an agreement with the President in which he has said he has not and will not call Hezbollah anything but a resistance, referring to its past and present. He said he will only call it a national Lebanese resistance. This specifies a real definition of the organization's weapons and purpose. It is a national Lebanese resistance, not a militia.
The Committee for Fighting the Bird Flu Disease in the Kurdish part of Iraq has executed 500,000 birds collected from large areas in the region following the discovery of human infections in the area. The Iraqi health minister explained that his ministry has an emergency plan to stop the spread of the disease.
We announced to the world and our people that the first reported infection of the bird flu has been confirmed in Iraq. We urge international organizations and the World Health Organization to help us quickly.
Following a short period of silence, there was an official announcement about the discovery of a case of bird flu in Kurdistan. According to medical sources, about 14 people have been infected with this disease in the region, and they were transported to isolated areas in hospitals that were designated to treat people with these lethal infections. In addition, there have been 2 deaths, one of which was confirmed to be infected with the H5N1 virus.
We accompanied the Iraqi health minister on his visit to people suspected of being infected with the bird flu virus. We put them on a medical regimen and we acquired special medical treatment in the form of a capsule that was given to them. Some of the patients have shown improvement.
وعلى إثر ذلك ناشدت الجهات الرسمية مواطنيها بعدم الذعر والهلع.
Foreign embassies called on their citizens not to panic and urged them to follow directions to stop the spread of the disease. Also, special teams were dispatched to fight the disease in remote villages and towns. The chicken farmers who are bound to endure huge material losses are trying to hold together until the problem is over.
إلى نهاية المطاف.
الحمد لله لحد الآن لم تظهر في منطقتنا أي إصابة مرض إنفلونزا الطيور أو غيرها.
Thank God, we do not have any reported case of the bird flu or other contagious diseases in our region. The farms are under the control of a special veterinarian, and we monitor what is happening on a daily basis.
A delegation from the World Health Organization is expected to arrive in the Kurdish region, responding to a request by the local government to examine cases and take necessary measures. The discovery of the disease in the Kurdish region adds insult to injury because of the already bad situation in Iraq. This means that everyone in Iraq should unite and avoid divisions to face this danger together that no one could have predicted would come to Iraq. Salman Fakhri Al-Alam Al-Sulmaniya.
A bomb exploded near a Lebanese army barracks in Beirut early today, destroying a car and slightly wounding one soldier. Security sources said a local newspaper had received a telephone call from someone claiming to speak on behalf of Al-Qaeda and declaring that a security target would be bombed in Beirut in retaliation to the arrest last month of 13 Qaeda group members. The explosion occurred some 3 hours later at around 2 a.m. outside the Fakhreddin barracks in the Remnat al-Bayda district of the capital, shattering windows in nearby buildings. The sources earlier said the blast was caused by a car bomb, but they later said it had been caused by an explosive charge near or under the car. UN peacekeepers retrieved the body of a 17-year-old Lebanese shepherd this morning, a day after he had gone missing in South Lebanon during Israeli shooting in the area. The body was found in the Bastara region near the disputed Shebaa farms, with 3 bullets in his head, neck and thighs. This incident triggered indignation on the part of Hizbollah, who threatened to retaliate. The details with Yumna Tayara.
UN peacekeepers retrieved the body of a teenage Lebanese shepherd, Brahim Youssef Erhayil, this morning, a day after he went missing in South Lebanon during Israeli shooting in the area. Police said the father of the young boy discovered the body with Israeli bullets in the Bastara region of southern Lebanon near the disputed Shebaa farms. His body was transferred to the Marjayoun governmental hospital with bullets in his neck, head and thigh. The incident threatened to escalate tensions along the Israeli-Lebanese border. The young shepherd has been reported missing for 24 hours, and his family thought the Israeli army, which patrols the Israeli side of the border, kidnapped him alongside another Lebanese hunter. The latter, however, was released last night. Earlier, when the 2 Lebanese were still missing and presumed captured by Israeli forces, Hezbollah Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said the captives should be quickly returned to Lebanon. Nasrallah vowed retaliation before the body of the 17-year-old was found. Hezbollah says its attacks are in retaliation to Israeli infringements of the Lebanese sovereignty, including almost daily airspace violations by Israeli warplanes. Nasrallah had said yesterday that if the civilian got killed, the resistance would punish the killers without hesitation. In Jerusalem, an Israeli army spokeswoman said an Israeli patrol had spotted an armed man who crossed the international borderline. The Israeli patrol claimed the man fired at the troops, who then returned fire and identified a hit. The Security Council authorized UN peacekeepers this week to remain another 6 months in South Lebanon. The force has deployed in the area after an Israeli invasion in 1978.
The killing of Ibrahim Al-Hayil was the subject of discussions today between Foreign Minister Fawzi Salloukh and American Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman. The Foreign Ministry awaits two reports, one from the Army Command and another from the UN Interim Forces in Naqoura, to give more details about the circumstances of the crime.
Rejected criticism that the troops used excessive force against the settlers. He says his men were instructed to use as much power as was necessary to carry out the court order. Karadi added, the settlers had prepared barricades and stockpiled rocks and other weapons to forcibly resist the police. Nevertheless, several questions remain unanswered. The IDF and the police will have to explain why, in the days preceding the evacuation, after the area was declared closed to non-residents, so many youngsters managed to gain access to the settlement, why their respective intelligence branches did not warn of the level of the impending violence. And the security establishment will have to ask itself why the lawlessness in the West Bank settlement enterprise has been allowed to go on for so long. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
The settlers are responsible for the outbreak of violence yesterday at the Amona outpost. That's the view of some 39% of the public, according to a telesector poll commissioned by the Army Radio. 19% of those polled say the police are at fault for the violence and large number of injuries. 31% think that both sides are to blame. The poll also examined other public attitudes towards the settlers. When asked about the political factors leading to the clashes, some 70% of the respondents said that the fault lies with past Israeli governments who encouraged Jews to settle in all areas. Some 64% said that Yeshua settlement leaders were at fault. 57% blamed the rabbis who educated the settler youth who came to resist the demolitions. The present government was held accountable by some 51% of the public, who said they should have granted more effort to a negotiated solution to the confrontation. 63% of those polled say that while they understand that the settlers feel betrayed by the government, their use of violence was unjustified. 15-year-old Yahia Mayal, who was seriously wounded during yesterday's evacuation of the Amona outpost, has regained consciousness. Eyal suffered a skull fracture during the clashes and had been listed in critical condition.
Any move to involve the UN Security Council in the row over Iran's nuclear program would mean the end of diplomacy. That's the message from chief Iranian nuclear negotiator Ali Larijani. His warning came after key powers reached an agreement to report Tehran to the Security Council. The move was announced following talks in London between the US, UK, Russia, China, France and Germany. But the states have agreed that the UN Council will take no action until March. It's then due to receive a report from the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA. Iran denies Western claims that it's aiming to build a nuclear weapons program.
We still believe that during future talks we can reach a result that is acceptable to all. But if they pursue an unfriendly path, they may be able to start something. But it is not clear whether they themselves will be in a position to end whatever action they began. It will not be in their interest. Our advice remains that through serious and constructive dialogue, they should pursue this issue, and the opportunity for negotiation still remains.
Well, I hope it's sending a message that the international community is united, and the fact that it's reported rather than referred simply means that the Atomic Energy Authority will continue to be involved. But this is going to be discussed and then decided upon by the UN Security Council. Now, that is a very important step. We couldn't get agreement to that before. We've got agreement to it now.
Iran has moved to reassure the West that it doesn't plan to reduce its oil exports if the UN introduces sanctions against its nuclear ambitions. Iranian Oil Minister Kazem Khamenei said the issues were entirely separate. Speaking at a meeting of the oil group OPEC, he said, "From our point of view, there's no link between the two." Global oil prices have risen in recent weeks due to growing international concern about Iran's nuclear plans.
What we will do in March. But all the scenarios is there, all the doors is open, we will discuss everything.
Any discussions about the Iran situation with the Security
No,
Council?
no, we will not discuss it.
Why not?
It's not in the agenda, it's not part of OPEC business, you know, so we will not discuss it. It's not in the agenda.
But there's a big risk that if Iran is taken to the Security Council...
Well, this is the risk, is the United Nations risk, and they should calculate it, but you know, and they should, calculate this risk. But in OPEC, we will not discuss this.
Well, the Egyptian community in Britain is a tightly knit group. They're often drawn here as students, but then they find reasons to stay permanently. Egypt probably conjures images of pharaohs and pyramids, but what is less well known is the diversity of the people who call both Britain and Egypt their home. Here's our report. Most of Britain's Egyptian community live in London and the surrounding home counties. Aware of their history, they continue a long tradition.
Being Egyptian is, to me and to others, is something peculiar. Just brings back the pharaohs and the old culture. So you can't mix that with Syria or Iraq or no. Every one of them has got its own identity. But being Egyptian is only being Egyptian, and we would always love to be called pharaohs, sons and daughters and so on.
The Egyptian Cultural Association is based in central London. Its library reflects the deep links between Britain and Egypt. It also reflects Europe's fascination with Egyptian culture. Among its prized possessions is the series of drawings conducted on the orders of Napoleon Bonaparte after he commanded the French army against the empire of the Mamluks. But the link between Britain and Egypt has stood the test of time.
This is a historical relationship going on for 200 years now. Britain has been the first place for Egyptians to be placed for their studies. We have a very good relations with the universities here.
Though most Egyptians are Muslims, the Christian Coptic religion goes back to ancient times. They've brought this faith to Britain. The very word Copt is how the land of Egypt gained its name. The linguistic path came via Greek and Arabic, including the conquest by Alexander the Great in 332 BC. As with Egyptian Muslims, being a Copt gives the second generation a unique angle on life in Britain. Miriam's parents came here 25 years ago.
When I think about it, Britain is my home. I was brought up here, I lived here all my life. But when I think about my background and my culture, it's very much Egyptian and Coptic.
Generations and cultures can face potential conflict, especially where love is concerned. Keeping a balance without making the younger Egyptian generation feel outsiders in Britain is a delicate process.
We have certain traditions in boy-girl relationship pre-marriage. The society here is a little bit more open and relaxed about this relationship, and we try to avoid that situation because it doesn't suit our traditions and beliefs.
Whether Muslim or Copt, whatever their faith, the Egyptian community draws strength from the past. It's learnt how to be sons and daughters of Britain, as well as of the pharaohs.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.